Hey everybody, so I just wanted to do a video on the Dlab test, which is the test that you have to take if you are interested in becoming a linguist in the military. Um, it's a very difficult test. When I took it last week, so it was May 31st of 2017. I had looked up some information. There's not a whole lot out there. Everybody that I've spoken to personally that knows anything about the test is the same general consensus that you should basically just plan on failing the test because it's that difficult. I'd agree with that assessment. My recruiter for the Navy, he has had 3 people, including me, take the test, and I'm the first one to pass it. So it's that test is no joke. Um, so basically, it's 4 sections. The first one isn't really graded. It's not part of the test. It's just like a survey of how well did you do in school? Did you do well in English? What were your grades like? Do you speak any languages proficiently? You know, what's your experience with foreign languages? Just that kind of stuff that they use for their statistics. Just answer the questions honestly. It doesn't really affect you at all. Then the next section is the auditory section. That's where you have your little headphones on. They, you know, read you the rules and all that. They're on the screen. You can read along. And then that section is broken up into different parts. It's like 3 or 4 parts for that. Basically, it's made up language. And then they give you different rules that you have to follow, and then each section is different rules, and then that final section, or that final part rather, is all the rules combined together. So it gets progressively harder as you go along in the test. So like the first rule might be the noun comes before the verb, and then the second rule would be they both the noun and the verb have to end in the same vowel sound. And then they give you an example. So it'd be like blue moon. Written in English is the question. All it says is blue moon. Then you have to use those rules to translate it into this made-up language. So, and then you'll have 4 options. You only hear them once. It's not written on the screen at all. So, like, the choices will be 1, A, 2, B. That's all you get to choose from. So you have to listen closely the first time because you only get one time. So, for the example, blue moon, well, the verb or the noun comes first, so it would be blue moon. Well, then the second rule would be they have to end in the same vowel sound. So moona blua would be a correct answer. So you'll listen to it. One of those answers will be blua moona. You select that answer and then move on to the next question. Some of them, as you move on in the test, will get a little bit tricky because it'll be blua moona will be an option, and then moona blua will be another option. So you have to just remember the order. All the rules have to be followed, otherwise the answer is not the correct answer. That's an easy example. That's actually was the sample question that they used for me. But yeah, you get to, they give you the rules. You don't have to memorize them. They don't automatically pop up after you read them the first time, but there is a button you can click that says View Rules, and it'll give you the rules that you're following for that particular section. So the first one, it's the first 2 rules. Then the second part is 2 new rules, but it's only those 2 rules. And then the third is like 2 more rules, and it's only those 2 rules. And then that final part is all 6 rules that you have to follow. You do only hear the options once. You don't get pen and paper to write down anything during the test. According to the official rules, there are portions where you're allowed to have paper, but my testing center wouldn't give me paper for any of it. um, which is fine. And then, so that's probably one of the trickiest parts. That's the majority of the test. Um, just know your parts of speech, verb, noun, adjective, possessor, all that. If you don't know them or you don't know them very well, you can probably figure it out in context. The sentences are rather simple. Towards the end of the auditory part, though, you get into a lot of alliteration and words that are very similar. So you'll get like the president presides over the present, like just, or the precedent, whatever precedent, and like you'll get a lot of really closely sounding words, and it gets confusing. Um, so it does get harder as you go along the test, which is pretty typical. There's a time limit for each section or each part in that section. It's a fairly tight time limit, I think. I'm normally a pretty fast test taker, but for the auditory part, there was one section where I had 30 seconds left to answer that last question. So, I mean, it's a little bit tight. But yeah, just do your best. There's not a whole lot you can do other than just listen closely, know your parts of speech. Then the second section of the test is some sort of mathematic craziness. You have 3 lines across the screen. That line represents a number, and then you'll do simple math problems like they'll put a box above the line and you add 1 to the number. If there's a box below the line, you subtract 1. So you have the lines, they stay there, and then the boxes just flash, and there's 3 lines. So it could be the first one, then the third one, then the first one again, and then like it's not, some of them go fast, some of them go slow. They're not all super easy. Some of them go pretty quickly, so it's a little tricky. It's just testing your memorization, so practice memorizing things. The concept is really simple, but when you're actually taking it, you're like, oh, was that a what? And then you have to type in your answer. Do your best. There's not anything you can do about it. And then the third, well, technically it's the fourth, but of the test, it's the very last section is abstract reasoning. You'll get a set of pictures and then a little blank square or question mark, and you have to guess what picture goes in that spot. You'll have 8 possible answers for that. Usually you can eliminate 4 of them right off the bat, and then you just have to look for the pattern. Like the pattern can be across, up and down, a combination of them. Just find the pattern. Logic games are really good to practice for that section, especially like Sudoku. That would be helpful. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot you can do to study for the test. I know there are some study guides out there. I believe you have to pay for them. I'm not sure. I didn't use any of them. So I don't know if they're helpful or useful or not. But it's a difficult test, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I probably would never want to take it again, though. I literally walked out of that test with the worst headache I've ever had. There was one point during the auditory section where I was literally sitting there doing this, going, can I just stop taking the test because I'm going to fail anyhow? But I'm glad that I didn't stop and that I took the whole thing because I did end up passing. So that was an intense few minutes, because after you're done with the test, you raise your hand. They walk you over to the testing and computer at the front of the room. They get your score on one computer, and then they have to transfer it over to the other computer, which is literally 5 feet away, to make it official. And that takes a couple minutes, but she knew my score before she transferred it. She saw it, and she's like, oh, if I read that correctly, you passed. But she wasn't sure, so then I had to wait 5 minutes going, I passed, maybe, but I did end up passing. It came back official that I passed it, but just have fun with it, enjoy it, do your best. There's not anything that you can really do to study for it, but you either have the ability to do it or you don't. If you do fail it, you can retake the test in 6 months. Quite honestly, if I had failed the test, I probably wouldn't retake it just because I did have a headache after. But I mean, but on the flip side, I know what it's like, so I know kind of what to expect. But yeah, it's a hard test, but the premise and the concepts that you're tested on are relatively simple. Um, so yeah, that's the Dlab. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. If you're considering taking it, go for it because it's a pretty fun test. I enjoyed it for the most part, other than the headache, but you don't have anything to lose if you don't pass it except for a couple hours of your time and possibly your sanity, but I'd highly recommend it. If you're interested in doing it, go ahead and do it because you might be surprised, but it's definitely a test that can be passed. Just not a lot of people do, but it is possible, so why not you? Go ahead, take it. Have fun with it. Don't stress too much about it. Just get a good night's sleep before you take it, get a good breakfast, and remember to keep breathing while you take the test. And don't give up in the middle, even if you want to. So that's my advice. Good luck on the Dlab. You can pass.